Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I was 45 when I met Victor. I was married. Comfortable, at least on paper. My husband Mark was dependable. A provider. We had raised 2 children, built a house together, survived illnesses, debt, and the wear and tear of 20 years. But somewhere between stability and stagnation, I'd gone invisible. Not to the world, no. I still had my job, my friends, my routines, but to the one person who had once looked at me like I was the center of it all, Mark didn't see me anymore. Not really. He kissed me goodbye on his way out the door. He asked if the groceries were done. He remembered my birthday. But it had been years since he had touched me, not out of obligation, but out of need. I didn't blame him. I didn't even blame myself, but I did feel lost, dull, fading, and then there was Victor. He was 70, and I met him at an art workshop I had almost skipped. It was an oil painting weekend in the countryside, hosted by a friend of a friend. I hadn't touched a brush in years. Mark had rolled his eyes when I told him I was going. Just don't come back with some midlife spiritual awakening, he had joked. I didn't laugh. Victor was the instructor. Silver-haired, tall, slow-moving, but steady. His eyes were impossibly bright gray, like the sea before a storm, and his hands were speckled with age spots and calluses from a life spent creating. He had been a sculptor once, a painter always, and his voice was gravelly and low. The kind of voice you lean into, even when it's whispering nothing at all. He noticed me. Right away. You hold the brush too delicately, he said on the first. Afternoon. You're afraid to press into the canvas. I blushed, unreasonably flustered. I'm not afraid. He leaned closer. His breath smelled faintly of mint and something earthier. Then show me. It was the first time in years. I had felt something flicker inside me over the next 2 days. We barely spoke outside of painting. But his presence haunted me, soft and solid, like velvet over stone. He would pass behind me, place a hand gently on my shoulder to adjust posture, guide my wrist as I shaped a curve. His touch was never inappropriate, but it lingered. On the last evening, there was wine, laughter, a fire in the hearth, and the smell of linseed oil still lingering on our clothes. I stayed late to help clean up. He watched me. You paint like a woman who's forgotten how much she used to feel, he said. I didn't reply. I just set the brushes down and stared at him. I used to feel everything. I whispered. He came closer, not with urgency, with certainty. His hands reached up, touched my face with a tenderness that almost shattered me. You still can, he said. That night, I didn't sleep in my rented room. I followed him to the guest house, heart pounding like it hadn't in decades. We didn't rush. Victor undressed me like I was something sacred. His fingers traced the lines time had left on my skin, not with judgment, but with reverence. When he kissed me, it wasn't with hunger, but with memory. And when he touched me, God. His hands weathered, knowing found places I didn't even realize had gone numb. He moved with no insecurity, no arrogance. Just presence, awareness. I had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted like that. I had forgotten what it meant to be touched by someone who wasn't trying to finish, only to feel. He made love to me as if you were painting. Slow, intentional, layer by layer, stroke by stroke. I cried, not from shame, but from remembering. Was 45. He was 70. But his hands knew me better than the man I shared a bed with for half my life. In the morning, I watched him sleep. There were wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, a scar above his brow, and a stillness in him that made me ache. He didn't ask me to stay. I didn't promise to return. We were adults. We both understood what this was, but I couldn't forget. When I went back home, something in me had changed. I tried to hide it. I tried to throw myself back into routine. But my body betrayed me. I flinched when Mark touched me. I closed my eyes and saw Victor's instead. And one night, when Mark climbed on top of me, I turned my face away. He noticed. What's going on? He asked Dot, and I told him Dot not all the details. But enough, Dot, there were fights, tears, silence. He asked if I loved Victor. I said no, because it wasn't love. Not in the way we define it, Dot. It was awakening. I told him I didn't know if I loved him either. He slept in the guest room for a week. Then he left for a weekend. When he came back, he sat beside me on the couch and said, "If I'm willing to try, are you?" I nodded, Dot. We started therapy. Slowly, uncomfortably, we confronted things we hadn't touched in years. I told him I needed to be wanted, not just needed. He told me he didn't know how to reach me anymore, so he stopped trying. There were more fights, Dot, but also, one night there was a kiss in the kitchen that didn't feel like duty. One morning, his hands wandered beneath my shirt and didn't stop, Dot. It took time, Dot, but eventually, Mark touched me, not like a husband reclaiming what was his, but like a man who had almost lost the map and was learning the terrain again. And me? I kept painting, I kept writing. I never saw Victor again, but I think of him often, Dot, not with longing, but with reverence. He was not a mistake. He was a reminder that I was still here, still a woman, still alive, still worth being touched. And seeing, Dot, and sometimes the people who know you best aren't the ones who know your birthday, but the ones who know your pulse, even if only for a moment, even if only once. In the months that followed, everything changed, and yet, from the outside, nothing did, Dot. Mark and I still hosted dinners, still celebrated our daughter's graduation, still held hands at family events. But behind closed doors, we were walking through ruins carefully, deliberately trying not to disturb the broken pieces. Too much, afraid of what we'd find beneath them. Therapy helped, but only in layers. At first, it felt performative, as if we were both waiting for the other to break first. He kept his voice calm. I kept my tears polite. It was like trying to renovate a house while living in it, dust in the air. Nothing quite stable, the echo of what it used to be haunting every room. But slowly, Mark began to shift. One night, I found a sketchbook on his side of the bed. I opened it, thinking it was mine, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Inside were journal entries, raw, unfiltered, painful things. His words, his rage, his fear, his jealousy, but also his heartbreak, his longing, his recognition of what we had both stopped tending to. "I saw her fading," one line read, and I told myself she'd come back if I just stayed still long enough. But stillness isn't love. It's waiting without reaching. I cried reading that, because for the first time, I realized he had seen it all along my slow erasure. He just didn't know how to stop it. One evening in late fall, we returned from therapy in silence. I sat at the edge of the bathtub, unbuckling my shoes, when he came in and knelt in front of me. "Do you still dream about him?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, slowly. Honestly, he looked down, then back at me. "And, do you still want me?" I didn't answer with words. I reached forward, cupped his face in my hands, and kissed him deeply, not because I should, but because I did. Because in that moment, it was him I longed for. Him I wanted to find again. We undressed each other with trembling hands, not with urgency, but with care. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like the stories. It was slow, halting, emotional. There were tears, laughter, apologies whispered against skin. And afterward, when I curled into his chest, I felt something I hadn't in years, not just comfort, but hope that we started rediscovering each other, not just sexually, but emotionally. We took walks without our phones. We asked new questions. I learned that Mark had once wanted to learn photography, but gave it up after the kids were born. I told him I'd never stopped writing poetry. He started photographing me candidly, secretly, sometimes in bed, sometimes in the garden. And I let him. For the first time in years, I let him see me without shame. And yet, Victor never left me entirely. I'd see older men on trains or in bookstores, and something would twist in me. Not lust, not even nostalgia. Just recognition I had been changed by him. Not because he had loved me, but because he had seen the woman underneath the roles. The woman I had abandoned long before Mark ever did. One day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a book. A slim volume of essays, self-published. Titled simply, "To the Woman Who Still Painted." No note, no name. But the dedication. Page read, "For the one who reminded me that time doesn't erase fire, it just buries it. Dig and you'll find it again." I held the book to my chest and closed my eyes. Mark came home later that evening and found me in the garden, barefoot, painting on the back of an old wooden door. He smiled. "That one for the living room?" "No," I said, without looking up. "It's not for display." He walked over, touched the small of my back. "Then who's it for?" "For me," I whispered. He kissed the side of my head. "Good." We stood there in the fading light. Not perfect. Not whole, but rebuilding. He was 70, and I was 45. But his hands had known me in a way that awakened something I had buried. And Mark, the man I had nearly lost, was learning to know me all over again. This time not as a wife, but as a woman reborn. It had been 2 years since that weekend with Victor, and Mark and I were making progress. Slowly, tentatively. There were moments of laughter now, moments of connection that had been absent for so long. Our therapy sessions had turned from painful exercises into meaningful conversations. We were no longer just existing side by side. We were starting to understand each other again, but there were still gaps. I kept painting, of course. I had rediscovered that part of me, but I never showed anyone my work, at least not completely. My brushstrokes felt like a secret, a hidden part of me that I was unwilling to share with anyone but myself. And then the package arrived. It was a late afternoon when it came. A thin, unmarked envelope addressed to me in elegant handwriting. No return address, no hint of who had sent it. My pulse quickened as I tore it open, only to find a single piece of paper inside. A photograph. It was me. The woman in the photo was standing in front of an easel, her face half lit by sunlight, a soft smile playing on her lips. But it wasn't just a photograph. It was a painting. A painting of me. And I could tell immediately that it had been done by Victor. The same soft lines, the same care, the same reverence. The brushstrokes were his. I froze. My mind raced. How had he found me? I hadn't seen or heard from him since that weekend. I thought we had parted as adults do, with an understanding that what had happened was a singular, fleeting moment. But now the photo, the painting. It was too much. It was a reminder. A reminder that I wasn't the only one who had been changed by that night. I showed Mark the photo that evening. His expression faltered when he saw it, his gaze lingering a little longer than it should have. But he didn't ask any questions. He didn't have to. Later, when he was out for a walk, I found myself staring at the painting once more. It felt like Victor was watching me even now. The tenderness in his eyes seemed to seep from the canvas, urging me to remember. To dig deeper, I couldn't resist. I picked up my phone and called the only person I thought could help me understand what was happening. My friend, Lucy, who had known me for years, picked up after the first ring. "Lucy, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you think it's possible to love someone even if you've never seen them again?" She was quiet for a moment. "You mean like love in the way you loved Victor?" I closed my eyes. "I don't know, but I think about him still. I can't stop thinking about him." "Because he awakened something in you," Lucy said softly. "The question is, have you told Mark?" I hesitated. "I haven't, but I think I need to." I sat with that for the rest of the evening. The words were heavy in my mouth, a confession that could shatter everything I had worked so hard to rebuild. But it was also the truth. And I knew Mark, in his own way, deserved it. When Mark returned home, I didn't wait for him to sit down. I simply said, "I think you need to know something. I've been thinking about Victor again." He didn't react immediately. He simply sat down next to me, his eyes tired but open. I know. I saw you looking at that painting earlier. I blinked, startled. You knew? He nodded, his voice quiet. I've known for a while. When we started therapy, I could see it in your eyes. The way you would drift off during sessions. The way you'd sigh, like you were remembering something, someone. My heart stuttered. In my chest, why didn't you say anything? Mark shrugged. What was there to say? I saw the way it changed you, but I also saw the way you were trying. I didn't want to push you. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I think about him, about what we shared, and I wonder if I've been running from it. From the parts of me that Victor saw that I didn't even know were still there. Mark's voice softened. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to be the reason you're trapped in a life you don't feel alive in. I don't know what to do anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking. I don't know how to move forward. Mark reached over and cupped my face, looking into my eyes with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. You don't have to move forward alone, and you don't have to carry all of this by yourself. We can figure it out together. Just then, the phone rang. It was Lucy. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice tight, but you need to come to the gallery. There is something you need to see. I felt a chill run through me as I stood, grabbing my coat. Mark followed me to the door. What is it? He asked, his concern etched on his face. I don't know, I replied, my throat tight with anticipation, but I think it's connected to Victor. At the gallery, I saw the last thing I ever expected. Victor's work had been on display. And as I stepped closer, I saw not just one painting, but an entire collection. Each canvas was more vibrant, more alive than I could have imagined. But in the center of the room, a new portrait caught my breath. It was me. Not as I was, but as I'd become. The woman I had never let anyone see, the one beneath the rolls, the one beneath the surface. I was standing there, raw, alive, a woman reborn. I stood still staring at it. And then I heard his voice, soft and familiar. Did you think I had forgotten you? Victor whispered, standing behind me. I didn't turn around. I thought you had. No, he replied, his voice steady. I never forgot you, not once. And as I looked at the painting, his final work, something in me clicked into place. I realized then that it wasn't Victor who had awakened. Me? It wasn't his touch, his tenderness, or even his gaze. It had been my own soul calling out, breaking free, and finally demanding to be seen. And Mark, he wasn't just trying to save our marriage. He was trying to save me from forgetting who I was in the first place. For the first time in years, I felt at peace with myself. It wasn't about Victor. It wasn't even about Mark. It was about me. And that was enough. As I stood in front of Victor's final painting, I felt a fire ignite inside me, one I hadn't realized was still burning. His gaze was like a slow, steady flame, constant but all-consuming. I hadn't expected him to be here in the gallery, but in a way, I wasn't surprised. He had always known me better than I knew myself. I turned slowly, feeling the heat rise in my chest. His eyes met mine with that same steady intensity. His presence filled the space between us, not with pressure, but with an undeniable pull. The quiet hum of the gallery faded into the background. All that existed was the warmth of his gaze, the weight of his unspoken words, the soft air between us that seemed to hum with possibility. You shouldn't have come, I whispered, the words escaping me before I could stop them. I had no idea what I meant by it, whether I was warning him or pleading with myself. Victor stepped closer, and his presence seemed to fill the room completely. I think you needed to see it, he said softly, his voice like gravel, but with an edge of something tender, something almost possessive. Needed to see you, to remind you that fire never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to reignite. I felt a tremor run through me at his words. He was right. For all the years of silence, the years of pretending I had forgotten, I hadn't. I still remembered. I still felt. Every memory of him, every touch, every whisper had been tucked away, but it was there, simmering beneath the surface, He reached for me then, his hand hovering just inches from my skin. His fingers were warm, calloused, a reminder of everything. He had been a man who had known the weight of time, the cost of creating, and the quiet power of being fully present in a moment. His touch was like a promise. It wasn't urgent, but it was certain. He didn't need to rush. He knew, as I did, that what had been awakened inside me wasn't something that could be satisfied with a quick touch. It was something deeper, more primal, more enduring. I closed my eyes, letting the heat of his proximity wash over me. When his hand finally touched my skin, it was electric. The spark was immediate, like a wildfire igniting in dry grass. My breath caught in my throat as his fingers traced the curve of my neck, down to my collarbone, his touch lingering as if savoring. The sensation of feeling me, Victor. I whispered, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I should, but he didn't stop. Instead, his lips brushed my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. You've forgotten what it feels like to be desired, he murmured. Let me remind you. It wasn't a request. It was a command. The promise thought the world around us fell away as he kissed me, slow and deep, with a tenderness that stole my breath and a passion that took me to places I had long buried. It was as if every part of me that had been dormant, every part that had been fading, was suddenly alive again. His kiss deepened, his hands moving with a reverence that sent a pulse of heat through my entire body. It was a dance, one I hadn't realized I was craving. His touch was slow, deliberate, each movement an invitation, a challenge, an awakening. I responded instinctively, my hands finding the rough fabric of his jacket, pulling him closer, desperate for more, needing to feel him, to be reminded of what it meant to be alive. Is this what you wanted? He whispered against my lips, his breath hot, his hands moving to the small of my back, pulling me tighter to him. I didn't answer with words. I couldn't. All I could do was show him, and so I did. I pressed into him, feeling the heat of his body, the strength in his hands, the undeniable connection that was building between us. It wasn't just about desire. It was about something deeper, something more essential than either of us had been able to articulate. We moved together, fluidly, as if we had always known this rhythm, as if we had always been destined to meet. At this point in time, in that moment, the world outside no longer mattered. There was no mark, no life we had built. Just the two of us, lost in the fire of rediscovery, in the heat of a moment that felt both inevitable and fleeting. But then, in a flash of clarity, something inside me pulled away, not physically, but emotionally. I stepped back, my chest heaving. As I struggled to catch my breath, Victor's eyes softened, his hands still on me, his expression one of understanding. You don't have to choose, he said, his voice low and calm. You're not trapped in a moment with me. This is yours. For you, just remember, you are still you. Still alive, still a woman. I didn't know what to say. Part of me longed to stay, to give in completely to the heat, to the passion, to the feelings that Victor had awakened in me. But another part knew that I couldn't because I wasn't just a woman in that moment. I was a woman with a past, with a future, and with someone else to answer to. I kissed him once more, deep and slow, as if to thank him for reminding me, for showing me that I was still capable of passion, a feeling, of being wanted. But then, I stepped away. I have to go, I whispered. Victor nodded, his eyes steady. He didn't stop me. He didn't try to keep me. He knew as I left the gallery, I felt the weight of the decision, but also the freedom that came with it. I had rediscovered something precious myself, and now it was time to go home. To Mark, to face the life I had built and the love I had almost lost. But it wouldn't be the same. It couldn't be because I was no longer just the woman I had been. I was the woman who had been awakened. And I knew that now I could never again be invisible.